Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with a combined 40 years of experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate different topics. As a friendly reminder, this is meant to be a conversational and educational conversation. And if you need other resources, please see the information section of this video. And so, Stacey, do you want to do an introduction?
Yes, thank you. I'm Stacey Gedeon. I'm a health psychologist and the founder of a healthcare consulting and professional coaching business. And for you, Dr. Radico, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dr. Gedeon. So, Julie Radico, I am a therapist, coach, author, and a speaker. And I'm just going to jump into today's question because I think it's a fantastic one. What's the purpose of identifying your values? So I know that in the coaching world, in the psychologist, therapist world, there's a lot of discussion on values. And I think this question is a great one because it's kind of like, Stacey, why? Why do I what makes this useful? So what's your initial response to that?
I was so glad that we received this question. To me, values are the foundation of so much in terms of our lives, our well-being, our happiness. And so we can think of them as fundamental beliefs that we have. They sort of act as a compass or a North Star,
Hmm.
um, ways of living, really. They differ from goals,
Hmm.
which are sort of what we want to achieve. They provide us a reason to keep going, especially during hard times. And there are tremendous benefits to being in touch with your goals and identifying them. And I'm wondering if you have some suggestions or input for how they can be used and even how to find them.
Yeah. So I love the distinction you made that like values can help us in our goals. And so like what might we do to identify our values? Because they can help us decide what goals to choose, how we pursue them, how if we want to stick to them, when to, say we've invested enough, but we're good, we're gonna shift gear. Like, it's that I love that idea of values are our compass of steering us. And when you ask like how do you identify them, there's lots of ways,
Mhm.
and you can make this really complicated. You can also, y'all, search online for values list, and you're going to get lists that have like 200 words on them. They're like you can go about this in lots of different ways, but like the most basic is look through the list and try to you can either start eliminating things
Mhm.
or like highlight and pull out what are the values that you resonate with the most. There was uh so the way I learned about how to help people through like identifying their
Yeah.
values was what's called a card sort, like a
Mhm.
values card sort. Way back in the day, I won't age myself. And so working with clients, basically you would have printed out 200 or so like little tiny sheets of paper that had a value written on them. And an example to make this concrete, like a value could be humor, it could be growth, it could be family, it could be novelty. Like values are, again, those things that like motivate you, give you purpose, meaning, guide you. And we would go through the card sort of eliminating, like cut it in half, go from, 200 to 100, and then cut it in half again, go from 100 to 50, and identifying what's resonating with you the most. What are the things that you're like, oh, slam dunk, this is something I value. So if you told me that family couldn't be part of my list, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like
Right.
family is a big value I have. And when I make decisions, I value how it's going to impact my family and how it's going to support my family, how it's going to help let me engage with my family. Like those
Yeah.
those processes help us sometimes narrow down to a good and y'all, we're not here to, say you can't have 10 top values or
Right.
12 or 11 or six if you're going for a top. Like be true to yourself and say, I am at a point in narrowing down these values to where every single thing I have that's less than 15 value. Like
Right.
these
Right.
are all meaningful to me.
Right.
Because at some point, you really want to then like prioritize them and go, okay, what's your number one?
Mm,
Or what's your top three? What are the things that if you were like, okay, you value your health, but say your health is you're like you can't, it's off the table. Like, what are the things that you would value instead? Or like in place of that, or like to help you get your health? Like, what are the connectors? What are the things that you you if you lost your compass, like wouldn't even have like the ability to spin anymore. Like those are the top things. You might say like,
right.
Julie, it's health. You don't knock it off the list. Like I don't care if I lose it. I am my mission is to maintain it and get it back. That is my driver. That
Right.
is my number one. There it is. Like I'm curious if there are other suggestions you would have or like other insights you would encourage people to pull
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, the card sort. I think we all had those stacks. Things
from.
that we would sort through. And thank goodness it's a lot easier. So there are things online if you just sort of search for values. I've even seen one where it puts up values against one another, so you have to choose what's more
Mm,
important. And that was challenging.
yeah.
Another way to think about it is, would how do I want to behave if kind of nobody's looking? You know what I mean?
Mm,
How do I want to be in this world? Would I want to keep living by this value, even if nobody noticed I was doing it? That's how important and integral it is to me. And does it, is it something that I feel very strong about? It's something that defines me in a way. And it's so important to me and how I make decisions, how I go through life, even the partners you may choose for friends or loved ones or significant others. And it's important to know that they provide a direction. So you don't achieve values. They give you a direction so that you might achieve goals and kind of help you with that decision making. Um, Speaking of relationships or friendships, what would you recommend to a client coming in who seems to be kind of butting heads with someone, maybe let's just say a loved one, about a big decision that's going to impact, let's say, the family? How would
Yeah.
you help them through that with regard to
Yeah.
values?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a fantastic question. And it's like the the heart and why we're talking about this question now is values, like that you ask it is like we oftentimes go throughout our relationships, our lives, and we don't know the values of the people around us, the people who are closest to us, or the people that we work with, that we love, that like, and we oftentimes can fall into a trap of assuming they
Hmm.
share the same values.
Mhm.
And those assumptions can be really like they can result in really harsh wake-up calls at
Yeah.
times. And think about, we're not going to get into politics by any means, but if people are thinking like, well, what could be a like you might not realize that somebody you care about, or you might realize, and it's hard for you to cope with that they have a different political value or value something in politics that's different from you. And so to your question, like if you're making a big decision about the family and you're finding that you're misaligned with your
Mm.
partner in some way,
Yeah.
it might be because you might somehow have magically ended up with a top five list of values that all are the same. But even just like as your partner, but even just like the different order of those values. Like you both might value novelty, but maybe your partner values financial security,
Yeah.
number one, and novelty is number five. And you've got novelty as number two and financial security as number five.
Hmm.
You then are misaligned. Like you've got similar values, but they're not connecting
Hmm.
in the way that's helping you like just feel like you're on the same page. So
Right.
like talking about that, getting that out in the open to have candid discussions and being, I know Stacey, you and I, we mentioned this on so many of our videos, but like being kind and not dismissing or devaluing somebody else's value
Hmm.
if you're especially if you're like in that scenario, you're overlapping on all of your top five and they're just in different prioritized
Right.
orders, like you understand their value, it's just not lining up. So
Right.
like trying to be kind to each other in that. I think it's a fantastic point. Like you got to get it out on the table to
Yeah.
where is this person coming from? And I will say, and I'm so curious, like please like tell me what thoughts are coming up for you. There are values that others will hold that you do not share.
Yeah.
And you might have a really hard time understanding where their value comes from. And so, how do you take care of yourself and
Mhm.
set a boundary in a healthy way with somebody who you're like, Julie, this is never going to align. Like, our values are just so far apart, and I don't know how we're ever going to come back together. Like, being aware of that. You don't have to undo your own value system to try
Mhm.
to like mesh with somebody else.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And it can be hard. And I think part of it depends upon the relationship. So we all have people in our lives that may have a vastly different value. Um, and we could fill that in with lots of things.
Mm,
And depending on how close they are to us, may determine how much we might seek to understand them. So if it's someone protesting against something that you strongly believe in, but they're a
mm,
stranger and you're passing by, you may not invest a whole lot of time and energy. If it's a loved one, a friend, a partner, a family member, it might be worth your while, again, if you value family and closeness, to again be curious.
mm.
Instead of, we always want to know, well, why do you think that, or why do you support that?
Yeah.
Um, Instead, it can be helpful, again, to take pause and really try to understand, and
Yeah.
maybe asking in a way of, well, what about that is important to you?
Mm,
And then they can describe their value. This issue is important to me because, and then that helps you. It doesn't mean you agree,
mm,
but it means maybe there's a middle ground where you can understand or agree to disagree, but still be respectful.
mm.
And I think, again, depending upon the closeness and how much energy you're wanting to put into that, will dictate kind of how you might approach that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, other thoughts that you're having on that.
Yeah. I think it's such an important point. So we talk about values for ourselves and we talk about wanting to be aware of others' values, especially people who we love and we care about, and how misalignment might really make it so we like feel we question whether or not we can maintain a relationship, or like we really need to be thoughtful about what that relationship would look like so that you can still feel healthy and
Right.
reassured in your own value system. Because like we talked about, like your values are your guideposts.
Mhm.
They're one of the things that I hope people are like thinking about in this conversation is like values help us make decisions. They help us feel reassured in our decisions, or decide between two or three options where we're like, I don't know, they all sound okay. Like, well, how do my values come into play? And I personally, I have a list of my values. As Stacey and I started talking about
Yeah.
this, I pulled up the values that I have saved because I check on them um, pretty consistently to say, okay, well, where am I focusing my time? What am I saying yes to, and what am
Yeah.
I saying no to? And how does this align with what I feel like in my good deep reflection I've come up with of these are my guideposts. This is my compass.
Yeah.
Um, and trying to find ways to reassure yourself that your values are important no matter what others might say. And also gently as I could say this, sometimes you might realize that something you were taught to value, or something that you learned
Mm.
growing up to value, is no longer a value that you want to hold. And that's
I That is
Okay.
so important. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Mm,
Yes, and add to that, not only might that be something that you sort out and can be, kind of a challenge to figure out for yourself, even your own values at different stages in your life
mm,
will change.
mhm,
And so I like that, we both kind of pulled out our values lists and checked them out. And really, it's something we should do ourselves and encourage others to do pretty routinely,
mm,
just to make sure we're aligned with that. Um, the other thing you'd mentioned, knowing our values and living our values helps with setting boundaries, knowing what we're going to say yes to, decision making, and it also helps with resilience.
mm,
And what I always think of, one of my favorite books is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, he quotes Nietzsche a lot. And the quote that I love is, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." And for those of you that are familiar with Viktor Frankl's this book, it's about concentration camps. And just to do a horrible paraphrasing of his entire masterpiece is he sort of, all things being equal, really looked at what made the difference between those that survived concentration camps and those that didn't.
mm,
And it was having this sense of purpose
mm.
that are aligned with your values. And that's what helped people going. So I wanted to just point that out as well, as it can help during really rough times to help us feel centered and grounded.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, and it's a powerful quote. Um, as we wrap up, I think my takeaway for listeners is reaffirming that values can act as a guidepost. You
Mhm.
know, if you're like, I know my values, this has been helpful to reaffirm that. Or if you're just dipping your toes in the value talk, like that, it's something that really can help. Knowing what you value and having taken time to reflect on that, it can help you live a life that's connected to what gives you the most meaning.
Mhm.
It's I that purpose and that meaning and like that guidepost, all of these heavy terms that like they are just so important. And I think that this conversation has been a really great one. What would be a key takeaway that you would want people to carry with them?
I my one of my key takeaways would be, that they're deeply personal, the values are, and there's not a right set of values or
Mm,
best values. And so it's sorting out, literally or figuratively, um, what ones feel authentic to you and really tend to resonate with you. And then again, just over time, reevaluating them because they evolve and they change depending upon where you are in life.
yeah, I love that. We are ever evolving individuals as human beings, and to continually check in with yourself and to value your values and
Yes.
reevaluate your values because yeah, I imagine if we asked everybody listening to tell us their values when they were 10
Oh,
versus their values as an adult, they're
sure.
probably different.
A little
Candy was
bit.
on my values for sure. And now it's lower on the list now. I mean, sure. Um, Candy is delicious, y'all. So on that note, please comment, like, subscribe, send us messages to submit questions on our social media for topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.